Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the MCAT grind. Today we have Psychology Chapter 5, Motivation, Emotion, and Stress. This chapter combined has a yield of 7% on all of the psychology section, so you can expect about a good 4 or 5 questions, at least, minimum. So, we have first motivation, purpose for action. Motivation is defined as the purpose behind action and the driving force. So there are many theories that describe it. I got out most of them. If there's any that I lost, please let me know. The instinct theory is based on fixed action patterns that us as organisms do. So perhaps wolves have the urge to howl or have the urge to hunt in packs. So it's built into our biological instincts. Arousal theory for motivation is the desire for optimal stimulation. So according to the Yerkes-Dodson curve, if we are completely not stimulated, we don't feel very good, and we want to get a little bit more stimulation, perhaps music in the background or getting up and moving, so our stress moves up. But if it goes too much stimulation from the outside, like too many loud noises or sensory overload, as we refer that, we also don't really like that. We want to reduce that amount of stimulation from the outside. So we have a peak arousal from external stimuli that we do the best in. And another motivation that's similar is the drive reduction. Drive is different from stimulation because drive can be defined into primary and secondary drive. A primary drive would be biological need for such as eating or drinking, sleeping, things that relate directly to our biological and physiological requirements. The secondary drive would be like the feelings of learning. You want to excel at school, you want to do well in a subject, do well on the MCAT. That would be a secondary drive. That is feelings of achievement and things that beyond the physiological requirements. And you want to maintain that homeostasis within your body, but also the drive for your secondary requirements. Need-based is pretty similar and spans across. It is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So at the very bottom pyramid, the very priority is all your physiological needs. You need all your food and your drinks and safe place, and that's your security after for where you have a place to stay. And then you will have feelings of social attachments, and then finally feelings of accomplishment, feelings of achievement, and then finally is self-actualization. So actually finding out who you are and what your worth is. So at the very tip is the least or the last step. So it's not a priority. The priority is always the food first, and getting your body to stay alive. We have our incentive theory, which is basing on the behaviorist theories. So rewards and punishment. You're motivated because you want certain rewards, like you want a chocolate as a treat, or you want to avoid being punished, like being yelled at for not doing chores. Expectancy value theory is based on how you expect, or what's the chance you expect to actually accomplish the goal, combined with how valuable the goal is. Let's say I'm going on a trip. I want to go on a trip to Japan, and I would say, how realistic would it be? Can I expect it to be complete within the summer? And also, what's the value? The value is super high because it would be very cool to go there. However, can I expect it? Probably not, because all of the combined scheduling would make it not possible. So that will not achieve my motivation, or that will not build up my motivation. The motivation would require both of them to be up, the level to be up. The opponent process theory explains tolerance. So our body naturally respond to a certain stress or stimuli by counteracting effect to it. So let's say you enjoy playing a certain game, but then your body gets re-stimulated. You want to play that game, play. However, your body starts to want to lower that stimulation because it looks at it as foreign, right? Your body's experiencing all this euphoria, and your body naturally lowers it. So you then don't feel the same anymore. You want to play even more to achieve that same level of stimuli. That's how we receive those burnout phases, right? And if said in the same for drugs, if you take drugs or alcohol, your body will feel naturally good and calm, but your body starts to counteract the effect to raise your stimuli level and make you more aroused. So even when the alcohol and drugs effects wears off, you feel the excess level of stimulation, then that's when you get the withdrawal effects, which is anxiety and jitters, so forth. Next, the last one we have is the sexual motivation. It's based on organisms' hormones inside them that triggers the response. And the odor effect has also been found to trigger the sexual desires and motivation to perform certain tasks. Next, we have emotions. Emotion is roughly defined as the current state of mind that can be consciously attained. The physiological, behavioral, and cognitive aspects make up for emotion. So it's split into three major parts. The physiological aspect describes the heart rate, the breathing rate, the biological behavior, or the biological state, such as skin temperature, whether your body feels cooler or you start sweating. The behavior is what you do during the emotion. When you smile, when you're happy, right? Your heart could start racing for your physiological response, but for your behavioral, you might start and do a smile, or you start waving your hand as a good gesture. The cognitive aspect is how you perceive the emotion. So, do you actually think that you're happy? Do you have a good memory of being happy? So those are the appraisal of how you have experienced that level of happiness. So we have 7 universal emotions. We have happy, sad, surprise, fear, anger, contempt, and disgust. We're pretty familiar with happy, sad, surprise, fear, anger, contempt. You can think of contempt as you look down on something. So you look down on an action, you think that is not appropriate, you don't think that's acceptable. If someone spills a drink on you and they rudely just say, oops, and they don't even apologize, you look towards them with contempt. You look down on their behavior. Alright, we have the James Lange theory, Cannon-Bart theory, and the Schachter-Singer theory, the 3 different ones to try to explain what emotions are, or how they occur. The James Lange theory first describes as there's a physiological response that we experience, and that triggers the emotion. Let's say we see a snake, and suddenly our heart starts racing, and we're like, oh, my heart's racing. That means I must be feeling scared or feeling fear. And another example would be, I'm just walking down the street and I see my good friend, and my heart starts racing. I get all jittery and jumpy and stuff, and I would feel that as, oh, I'm feeling happy now. However, this theory, you can see that it's quite weak, because if I start running, right, and jogging, I'm not gonna suddenly feel, oh, my heart's racing, I must be happy, or I must be angry. So that's the weakness of the James Lange theory. Cannon-Bar theory explains the weakness by combining the nervous system physiological response plus the actual feeling of emotion, and that leads to a subsequent action. So what that means is, if you see a snake, your heart starts racing and you feel an emotion saying, oh, I am afraid, I am scared of the snake. And combined with my racing heart, I should get out of here. So the combined physiological response plus the emotion lead to a subsequent reaction or an action. If I am just jogging, right, and I only have the physiological response of heart racing, I don't have the emotion aspect of feeling happy or feeling sad, so I don't have an action to counteract it. So yeah, there's no I don't need to do anything. So that explains the weakness part of the James Lange theory. However, the Cannon-Bar theory also don't explain the vagus nerve, which goes from the central nervous system, the head, and going down, or going from peripheral nervous system going back to central nervous system. So another physiological aspect to it. The Schachter-Singer theory tries to resolve all of these weaknesses, and by combining the physiological response plus an actual label to the response. So the labeling requires either a previous experience or you're conscious to perform a label. So what that means is, if you see a snake, you're experiencing heart racing, then you say, oh, I am currently feeling fear due to the snake, and that will result in the actual emotion being felt. Then I will then exert all the necessary components, the physiological, behavior, and cognitive components to emotion. So that labeling of a snake is actually detrimental to my health if it actually bites me. That labeling of it being a danger makes it an emotion. Another example would be, if I'm seeing my friend, I would say, oh, my nervous system is acting up as heart rate, and my labeling of, oh, it's my good friend. When I see a good friend, I would smile and wave, and my emotion would then be happiness, because all of those combined. Now we have our limbic system involving our emotions. That includes our amygdala, subnuclei, hippocampus, as well as our thalamus and hypothalamus. Thalamus, as we know, is the switchboard for sensory information, and from what we saw, the sensory aspect is quite important to delivering the physiological response and labeling them. Hypothalamus is a control center for homeostasis, so it regulates the hormone levels, the chemical levels in our blood, and keeping track of how we are feeling at the moment. The amygdala, as we have discussed, it's for feelings of fear and anger. It is also where implicit memory are stored. So implicit memory of unconscious feelings, like deep feelings about certain behaviors or thoughts, are stored in amygdala. Septonuclei is for reward system, and that reward system is contributed by dopamine, the neurotransmitter levels, and that contributes to how we are motivated to do certain behaviors more often than another. The hippocampus is for our explicit memory, and the memory of explicit recall and declarative memory system of certain actions, how to recall certain facts. That's all in a hippocampus. Also, as short-term memory is also a hippocampus. Next, we have stress. Stress is defined as challenging events, and when you have a challenging event presented to you, you undergo two appraisals. The primary appraisal determines whether the stress is relevant to you. Can you ignore the stress? Do you really need to deal with the stress right now? Then, if you really do need to deal with the stress, and the stress will then be secondarily appraised, and that means you will learn how to cope and reduce the stress to you. If you see an apple on the table, you're like, oh, that's an apple. I'm feeling hungry, so I will deal with the stress by eating it. Then my secondary, if I see a snake, then my primary appraisal, well, is the snake far away enough that I don't have to care? Sure, then I don't have to go to secondary. But if the stress gets really close, such as a snake getting closer, I will need to say, okay, I will need to cope by running away and getting out of here. The environmental, daily, work, and social aspects in our lives can contribute to stress. Perhaps the weather, perhaps a hard assignment, perhaps you're going to a party situation with you don't know anyone, or you're just feeling hungry. Those are all sources of stress and where they can happen. They are defined into distress and eustress. Distress means feeling unpleasant. The feelings of unpleasant, meaning you don't feel good about them. So losing things and the hot weather and perhaps a bad coworker or a hard assignment, they're all distress. They make you feel bad. Eustress means pleasant stressors. They make you feel good. So perhaps graduating, feelings of lottery, getting a really, really good score on the MCAT. Those are really good feelings of stress. But they are still stress nonetheless. If it overloads, then your body also could not take it as well. So we have the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS, describing how good health can lead to bad if the stress piles up. First, we have good health, and then triggers into alarm stage once there's some level of stress. And during resist stage, there's high levels of stress and we're resisting and keeping our body safe, and by doing all sorts of coping mechanisms against it. However, we start to lose that ability to cope, and we drive into exhaust stage where our body rapidly declines in ability to cope. So how do we cope? We can reduce stress and coping strategy using two main formats, either problem solving, tackling the issue by itself and removing the source of stress, or we can use emotional aspect and change our feelings about the stress. An example would be, I'm getting a bad score on my exam. What do I do? Tackling the issue of problem solving would be, okay, I will study harder and in the next exam it will be better. Emotional way would be change the feelings. Would be like, this test is not worth all my energy because it's not determining what's my worth. There are other things I'm good at. That would be the emotional and changing feelings about it. Exercise has been determined to be one of the best ways to deal with stress and the coping strategy because it releases endorphins naturally. That's like free chemicals. Think about it that way. Morphines on the market cost a lot, so if you're able to release endorphins and just get it naturally, that's a big profit. So that is it for motivation, emotion, and stress. Good luck with the grind.